Hello friends, welcome here. I'm excited to do this video. It is kind of an author's video, but more so I've seen this term go around booktube where like you want to read to zero an author, and it basically means you want to read everything that they have published. So I really like that idea, and there's definitely some authors in my mind that I want to read to zero, but then there's also some authors that I already have and that I'm fully caught up with all of their books. So that's really exciting. So I wanted to share both groups of authors. So I'll share the authors that I have read all of their published books, and then authors that I want to and that I have plans to read in the future. So I thought this would be interesting. These aren't necessarily my favorite authors, although most of them and a lot of them are, but it's just authors whose books are either easy to read, easy to pick up, my library tends to get them in, or they're just so popular that I also equally love them. Most of them are Christian authors, although there's a couple secular authors as well. So I'll start with all of the Christian ones because there's way more of them. And I don't own every single book that I've read from these authors. I read a lot from the library and I rarely buy books full price. I just try to be very conscious of how I spend my money on books. So that's why I don't own a lot of these books, but I'm excited to share them. I'll show pictures. But for the books that I do own, let's get into it. Some of these are going to be really obvious, and some of them are like easy because the author only has like 1 or 2 books out. But then some of these authors have like long series, and I actually have read every single book in the series. So that's exciting to share, but let's get into it. 2 easy ones for me to have done are Becca Kinzer and Melissa Koslin. They only have 2 books published right now. So for Melissa Koslin, I own Dangerous Beauty, and then I've also read Never Miss, which was so good. I gave both of these books 5 stars. I definitely want to own Never Miss because I can see myself rereading these. I love her writing style. So she's definitely one that I plan to continue to read to zero. So anything she publishes, unless her, topics and writing goes downhill, but for now, her first 2 published books I highly recommend and really love. And then for Becca Kinzer, I have read both of her published books. Dear Henry, Love Edith is a book that I have been hyping a lot on my channel, and I know it is a very hyped Christian book. I know not everyone loves this book, but a lot of people do, and it's just a very fun book to read. I gave this 5 stars, and then her most recent release is Love in Tandem, which I've also read. I gave that 4 stars, and I definitely plan to continue reading all of Becca Kinzer's books because I just really like her writing style. So let's go to my first love, I think, in Christian romance, and that is Becky Wade, you guys. I love Becky Wade's writing, and I think I will forever be a fan of her. She just introduced me to Christian romance in a way that it just showed me that there can be quality romance in the Christian market equally as good as secular romance books. So I have read all of her books, you guys, including the novellas. And I am just proud to say that because I've just loved her books for so long. I don't love every single book, but I do just appreciate her writing style and the way that she weaves faith and redemption into her stories. So her first ever published book is My Stubborn Heart, and this is a close contender for my favorite book by her. Absolutely love this story, and this is a standalone, which is so nice. She doesn't do a lot of standalones. She does have a lot of companion series, but so I own My Stubborn Heart, and then the next series that I read from her is the Porter Family series, and the first book is Undeniably Yours, but there's 4 books in that series. I have read every single one. The first book is my favorite. This isn't my favorite series by her in general. There's good things about them, but they're not 5 stars, whereas Undeniably Yours is 5 stars. So there's that, but really love it. And there are novellas within this series that I have also read, so yay. And then what comes next? I think it's the Bradford Sisters trilogy. So I have read this entire trilogy as well, and there's novellas in here that I've also read, and I really got hooked into Becky Wade's writing after this trilogy. I was like, okay, I want to read everything that she writes now. Almost like a mix of kind of mystery and plot with romance. I wouldn't say that romance is the main focus, even though it is centered around romance. And I guess if you don't read romance, this would feel super romance heavy. But if you do read romance, I feel like the plot and the romance are pretty equally balanced in all 3 of the books, in my opinion. But yeah, also really love this trilogy. And then next, this is my favorite series by her for sure. It's the A Misty River Romance series. It has 3 books and love every single one. Stay With Me is an ultimate recommendation. If you want to get into Becky Wade, this is a great start. Although I would also say My Stubborn Heart is also a great start, but I just think the quality of her writing is unmatched in this book, so love it. And then most recently she has started self-publishing, and so I have read the 2 self-published books she has, which is Memory Lane and then also Rocky Road, and I also am enjoying this series. It's not a favorite for me from her, but I still love being in her writing style. I still really just love the way that she writes her sentences. Like there's something about it that I'm like, oh, it's like I'm coming home. So yeah, I am very happy to say that I have read Becky Wade to zero. Okay, one that I'm really close to reading to zero and that I'm going to explain myself. So it's Dani Pettrey. I have read every series that she's put out. I know she has a lot of novellas in random places that I have not read, but I'm just going to say like her published series I have read. So the first series that I read by her was the Submerged series, and this is actually Alaskan Courage is the name, but Submerged is the first book. Love this series, and this got me hooked on her writing. But then she did come out with a Killing Tides trilogy, I think. Is it a trilogy? Is it a series or trilogy? And I read the first book and just didn't like it. I wasn't into it. I mean, it was fine, but compared to Submerged, it just did not measure up. So I didn't finish that series. So I'm going to count DNFs as reads as well for the sake of this video. But yeah, I did not finish the Killing Tides series. But then I did start her newest series, which is the Jeopardy Falls series. So I am really excited to see where she takes this. And then she also has a Chesapeake Valor series, which is 4 books, which I've also read all of those books. So yeah, Dani Pettrey is kind of close, but you know, with some caveats. I have read all of Dani Pettrey's books, and I have read her to zero, you could say, because I'm not going to go back and finish the Killing Tides series. But I definitely plan to continue reading the Jeopardy Falls series. Okay, another author that I'm pretty sure I've read to zero is T.I. Lowe. So I own Lulu's Cafe and Under the Magnolias. I DNF'd Under the Magnolias, but I did give it a fair shot. I listened to it on an audiobook and I tried to read some of it, and it just wasn't hooking me. And then I did read her trilogy, which I forget what it's called. Beach Haven is the first book. I did read that as well. And then I also have read Indigo Isle, which came out last year. So yeah, I have read. And Lulu's Cafe is definitely my favorite of all of her books, and it's the one that I own, so I'm happy about that. I wouldn't say she's an auto-buy author for me. Ever since Lulu's Cafe, all of her books are middle of the road, so yeah. But for some reason, I keep reading them, so I don't know. I do like her writing style, and I think she brings something unique to the table of Christian fiction, but it just doesn't quite hit like the romance levels that I want. Okay, and then randomly, according to Goodreads, Laura Gallier, who wrote the Delusion trilogy series. Oh, now I forget. I think it's a trilogy. I read that series, and according to Goodreads, she hasn't published anything else. So I have read that series. I would recommend it. I liked it. It was spiritual, young adult spiritual warfare, which was very exciting. And yeah, I thought it was good. Now to the secular, and there's not a ton of secular because like those authors just pump out books. But the author that I have read to zero, and I'm proud to say, can you guys guess? Probably my first love of authors. Maybe. Stephenie Meyer. I have read every single book that Stephenie Meyer has put out into this world, and I am proud to say that. I am a Twihard at heart. When I tell you I was obsessed with Twilight when I was in high school, I was obsessed with Twilight, okay? So I read every single book that she published within Twilight, including the movie guide, okay? And all the novellas, like everything. Life and Death, Midnight Sun, everything, you guys. I love it. And if she ever put out another Twilight-related book, I would absolutely read it, you guys. Absolutely. Hands down. Okay, so read that. And then she has 2 standalones. The Host, which should be a series / duology. Are we patiently waiting? No. But on Goodreads, there is a sequel to this book. I want it so bad. I love The Host. The Host is 5 stars, you guys. Sci-fi, okay? And then I've also read The Chemist, which I really enjoyed. Kind of random. Like it's a thriller, I guess. And it was exciting. So Stephenie Meyer, read to zero. And then the next author that I've read to zero, which is fairly easy to do because she only has 1 book out, although the next book is coming like pretty quick here, but it's Lauren Roberts with Powerless, okay? So I read Powerless. Powerful is coming out, I thought it was coming out April 2nd, but it has different release dates for different countries. In Canada, it actually releases on the last day of April. So yeah, I'll have to wait for that. But according to the date, I have read her to zero, okay? Okay, those are all of the authors that I've read to zero. Now, I did not know this would take so long, but we're gonna keep on going because there's a lot of authors that I want to read to zero. So here we go. I did not put these in order, so number one is for sure Francine Rivers. I still have quite a few I still have a number of books to read from her, but I've also read quite a few of her books. I'm just holding the masterpiece just because I love her writing. She is in her whole other league of writing for Christian fiction. It's just incredible. So I definitely want to read everything she writes. I haven't loved every single one of her books, but for the most part I have. Yeah. So for sure, we'll be reading all of her books sometime in my lifetime. And then I'd also like to read Frank Peretti to zero. This is Piercing the Darkness. It's the sequel to This Present Darkness. And I have a bookmark in it because I would like to read it again. These books have just impacted me so much. And I'm very curious if he's written, I know that he's written other books. And I want to see if he can tackle any other spiritual topics and do it well. Another one that I have always planned to read to zero, and now it's getting hard because he puts out a lot of books. It's Charles Martin. So Long Way Gone is my favorite book by him. When I read it again, it didn't have the same magic, so that's really upsetting. But for the most part, I love his writing. He's so poetic and he's very unique in the way that he writes. I really want to continue following his writing journey. He puts out nonfiction and fiction. I'll do my best to try to catch up, but he has a big backlist, and so I discovered him fairly late into his career. But yeah, he puts out a new book basically every year, sometimes 2 books a year. Very impressed though, love his writing, so I would like to read him to zero sometime in my life. Another one I want to read to zero is Kara Isaac, and she's helping me out because she's not publishing right now, which I wish she was, but she is a Christian romance writer and she's so talented. She's from Australia, which is a cool spin, so all of her books so far that I've read are set in Australia. Then There Was You is my favorite by her, but I've read several of her other standalones, and then I've got one on my TBR, and there's a couple that I still need to get my hands on, but I definitely love her writing and I plan to read her to zero too. Another one that I'm it depends how you look at it. Nicole Deese has a lot of self-published books, so I don't think I'm going to count those in this reading to zero thing, because if I count her just traditionally published books, I have read her to zero. So she's got a couple of standalones that were traditionally published. Before I Called You Mine is definitely my favorite. And then this is a duology that starts with All That Really Matters, and then All That It Takes is the second book. And I love her writing in these. She writes romance so well. She's kind of going down a literary fiction direction, I would say, rather than romance. So I haven't been as into them, but her romance specific books are really, really good. Another one I plan to read to zero is Rachel Fordham, and I definitely can do that because I own all of her books that are currently published. So these are the 3 that I've read, and then I've got 2 that I haven't read that I own, and then she has a new one coming out this year. So I am very excited to keep on reading from her. She's definitely becoming one of my favorite authors. I love her writing style and the way that she writes romance in particular. The communication, top tier, amazing. Okay, another author I want to read to zero is Katherine Center for sure. Now she seems to also have a couple self-published books, it looks like, but for her traditionally published books, there's a couple I haven't read. So, these 2 I have read, Happiness for Beginners and What You Wish For. Happiness for Beginners I read first. I was hooked. There is a pretty steamy makeout at the first chapter, but otherwise it's totally clean. She does put language into her books, but no descriptive sex scenes, which I appreciate. I love the way she writes and the way that she weaves in really deep life topics into lighthearted characters and romance. She's just so talented at that. So I'm going to try to get my hands on all of her books, and she's continuing to publish. So she does have a new book coming out called The Rom-Commers. I think it comes out in July maybe. And I definitely want to read that. So another author I definitely plan to read to zero, and again, if you look at the traditionally published books, I have read her to zero, but it's Tammy L. I absolutely love her writing. I could argue that she's also my favorite author because just the way that she writes, it's so easy to read, but her characters feel like real people. She's just so talented. And right now she's not publishing any books that I know of, so I can catch up. And then I hope she comes back because she's just so talented and we need her. But yeah, so My Hope Next Door, I think technically this is self-published, but her traditionally published book is Love and a Little White Lie, because Bethany House picked that up. So love her. Definitely plan to read her to zero, although I've read every traditionally published book that she has. She's got a couple self-published series and standalones that I still need to read, but someday I will. Okay, another one is Sally Hepworth. I want to read her to zero as well. She writes kind of like family drama thrillers, domestic thrillers, I guess you could say, and I love the way she writes. I also love her writing. It's just so easy to read, but her characters are so interesting. She's really good at character work. And then she's good at putting in twists that I don't see coming. So yeah, The Good Sister is definitely my favorite by her. She actually has a fairly big backlist, so I got some catching up to do. Definitely she is one on my radar. And then I debated putting this author in because I'm not sure that I want to read her to zero, but I'm close to, so I want to include her. It's Sarah Adams. So I own 3 of her books, and I have read a couple of her books on audiobook/ebook. And then she has been picked up by a publisher, so she is going to be traditionally published now because she used to be self-published. So some of her books are coming to the library now, so I will be able to catch up and read her books. I recently read To Con a Gentleman and I loved it. That has a sequel that I still need to read, and then she has another duology that I want to read. And then she is continuing to self-publish, or not self-publish, traditionally publish books. So you guys probably know the Cheat Sheet has a sequel coming out called The Rule Book. It's almost here from the library, so I'm going to read it pretty quick here and I will tell you my thoughts. She was writing clean romance and now she might not be, so I don't know if I'll be able to continue to read her books because her previous published book is Practice Makes Perfect, and I was super let down by this book. It had so many cute moments, but they were overshadowed by the way that she wrote. Very, like, just too much details in the physical intimacy part. Not that there's no bedroom scenes in this book, but they get very close, and the way it's built up was too much for me, and I was really let down by that. But there's a lot of cute moments in this book too, so I felt so torn with this book. This is the sequel to When in Rome, which I did really enjoy. This is clean, and she does use swearing in her books, but for the most part there's no bedroom scenes, but she's kind of taking it in a direction where it's like getting too close for me. We will see where she takes the rest of her books. I don't know, but I am fairly close to reading her to zero, so it probably will happen. So I figured I might as well mention it. But yeah, that is the video, guys. I just thought this was interesting to share. I'm curious if there's an author that you've read to zero that you're either surprised by or that you're like, yeah, of course, because I love this author. And it just depends, I think, when you discover the author. Like, if they have so many books already behind them that you haven't read, it's like, oh man, I gotta catch up. But it's kind of fun. Like, if you discover an author you love and they end up having a lot of books, it's like so satisfying because then you can go back and read them. And then as they publish new ones, it's like so exciting to be a part of all that hype. So yeah, there's quite a few authors here that I have read to zero and that I'm close to. And there might be one that I forgot, but for now, this is it. So yeah, I will write all of these authors down below with the books. I mean, no, I'll just write the authors, okay? I'll write the authors and then you can screenshot if there was a book that you wanted to check out. I just thought this would be interesting to share. So thank you for watching this video, you guys. I really hope that you enjoyed it and I appreciate you being here. So I will see you guys in my next video. Bye.